stage over to Mr. Kamarul.
Thank you so much, dashing MC. If you don't know yet, this is the most exciting session of the day. I promise you. And unlike Thor, which we shall not see in any confines in Malaysia, we might be seeing Dato Dr. He does apologize. He's working so hard to try and make it today. He might be a bit late or he might not make it, but it's okay. This is Malaysia. And you're all waiting for this topic, right? So I'm going to take my seat. And thank you so much, MC, for already introducing my panelists. Save my job for me. Now I have to economy lah, because inflasi lah, whatever. So, but I do want to introduce my panelists a bit the way I see it. When they offered me to be the moderator for this session, I said no. I said no because I'm sick and tired of discussing this topic. I'm already past. That's what. I'm already past 50 years old, and I've been discussing this topic since I was just a rookie journalist first day 30 years ago. And we are still discussing this topic, but never mind. I said yes because the moment I see Madam President, I always love it in Malaysia when we have a lady on stage. They always accuse us of having manner. Today when I look, yes, finally, not only a lady, but a very distinguished lady. She's Madam President of the Bar Council, but don't just look at the title, look at her bio. Look at the committees she has chaired. Look at the causes she has fought for. AMLA. Without YMDB, nobody must know about AMLA. I only know AMLA and then AMLA fatwa, whatever. So long, yes, anti-money laundering, like that. The journalists would say it like that. And so I'm looking forward for her input. But I also have to introduce Professor Dato Dr. Jayles Yeoh, because don't just look at the organization. He is also an author, a public intellectual whose thoughts are demanded not just in Malaysia, it's gone all the way to the developed nation in Europe and everywhere else for his top leadership, especially lifelong learning and education. And I'm going to frame the topic of must we have, Political Funding Act, also from the perspective of the people's interest, where many people in Malaysia think that corruption is unbridled. Corruption is like a horse that has bolted out of the stable, and how are we going to catch this horse? So in developed nation, OECD report, past, present, and coming, they always frame political financing and political funding to the ability of having more transparency and to rein in corruption. For example, in America, and I would like to quote Bernie Sanders on this. Yes, he didn't become the president of America, but there was a lot of things. And imagine if if media America is unforgiving. If they know that you're not going to win, so usually they don't get much airtime. But Bernie did. And one of the things he said, our forefathers in America, when they founded the Constitution, they wanted the government of, for, and by the people. But money, especially Super PAC. Now, Super PAC, we might not be, a bit in the know about it, but it's simple. It's a group of people, individuals, or whoever, that can amass large amount of money outside the campaign parameters of the candidate. They are usually millionaires and billionaires, and they are, unlike in our country, not just for a particular party or candidate, but they can also just go against a candidate or a party. And they will buy ads and costing millions in the mainstream and traditional media in America for that. So if other nations already gone all the way, despite having Political Funding Act, still saying that the legal framework, the judiciary and everything else that they have in their country still not doing enough to capture the urgent imperative to really make political financing and funding transparent, to make it manageable by policy and by administration, then where are we in Malaysia? I've just shared with you my whole entire career from being employed to now self-employed. I haven't seen this, not tabled even once. How many administration has I gone to listen to the promise that yes, we have committees looking at this, yes, we are going to table this, but yet anti-hopping law got it first. Mana lagi banyak? Duit kempen politik atau orang lompat kursi? So that's the frame where I want to start today, but this is not about my opinion. This is about the experts giving opinion, and hopefully, because you can already see where this is going. Most of us in the room would say yes to a political funding act. But let's ask the politicians themselves, and hopefully Dato Dr. would be here. So I'm going to give the chance to the most intellect on the stage today, because he has Professor and Dato Dr. So please, you have about 10 slides, I believe, and after the slides, then we start discussion. Okay? Are you still with me? If you are, why are there no claps for my public intellectual? Thank you so much. See, no need bribery, right? You can be incentivized. Okay, over to you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you. I love to stand up. Sorry, madam. First of all, I like to thank the organizing chair, Mr. Cheah, for inviting me to speak. And as you can see, my profile is a lifelong learner, teacher by background. And I think the moderator has been very kind in addressing me to that. Yeah, some 1 month ago, I speak at a simple dinner, and I was asked to speak something about lifelong learning. And after I spoke for 10 minutes, I come down the stage, and there was one person who came directly to me and said that you wait for my legal letter tomorrow if you do not apologize. I find out that Malaysians can't take critics, and that's the way we love it. When we are being criticized, and although your name is not mentioned, I merely say that we are not doing too well as far as our education is concerned. And this particular young man came towards me at the end of it. So today I'm speaking on my behalf, because I'm worried that I will be receiving threats and legal letters after this. But I'm very happy that I think the moderator, Mr. Cheah, is here. Anyway, for me to talk about political funding as an educator my whole life is something that when Mr. Cheah invited me, I think that is something quite academic to me. But nevertheless, I did some research and tried to spare us this afternoon. Now, should political funding be legalized? That's the title today, that's the theme. Next, please. My answer is simple. As an individual, as a Malaysian who loves this country, living some 60 years now, since Merdeka till now, I'm for it. And as what the moderator said correctly, just now, this is something that everybody knows, that through so many general elections, and this is the 15th general election coming, and yet we are talking about it. So it is the political scene in our beloved country. We have heard about so many illegal transactions here and there. It's a fact that politicians also need funds to finance the activities. There's nothing to hide. And for all intents and purposes, why can't we be transparent about it? So my first thought or take on this is, yes, let's legalize it. What are we waiting for? What is holding us back? Next, please. In a nutshell, political funding, academically as it is being defined, is a method used by political parties from both divides to raise money for campaigns and campaign-related collateral to create awareness of their manifestos to intended audience. Simply, simple, nothing to hide, because for all intents and purposes, you need money for this forum, you need money for campaign, you need money for dinner, you need money for posters, and so on and so on. So, in a nutshell, it's just some kind of funding, and the funding is for political reasons. Next, please. So therefore, is it urgent now? Of course, the answer is yes. Not just because an election is coming, and every one of us are talking about it daily, but my answer is yes. The sooner the better, because a law is essential in reducing corruption and other malpractices that may turn out to be an embarrassment. And the word embarrassment is something that we have been hearing for quite a number of years now, but yet I think we are not really embarrassed about it. Whether the party is victorious, and whoever the official leader, if you don't define and be transparent about where the money is coming from, you are going to end up with a lot of problems. Next. So, political funding can tarnish election process because sometimes it creates negative public perception and opinion. Scandals, favoritism, legal issues, corruption, illegal funds, where are the funds coming from? Unethical practices, ruins and damage reputations and family honor. So these are the repercussions that we are going to face if we do not hold the political funding by its horns, as we said. Next. So some sources of political funding, as we all know, right? It can be individual supporter, and in Malaysia, you know, there are many individual supporters. It can come from membership fees from your political party, grassroots funding, small donations, party members, donations, and we heard about donations for a number of years. And the word donation is caused a party to lose its election in January election 14. Yeah, and the word donation, whether it's public, private, or philanthropy, and others. So that kind of political funding, these are the sources. Next, please. Countries that have enacted regulations and guidelines for political funding. Norway in 1970, Canada in 1974, Japan, closest to us, in 1994. We talk about look east policy, we look everything about Japan, but we never want to have our political funding legalized for whatever reasons that we know best, and only the politicians knows better. United Kingdom 2000 and New Zealand 2010. So these are the countries that have legalized and provided guidelines for political funding. Have they done better? Are they still wrapped in scandals and so on? It's food for thought as we have this forum today. Next. Does public funding help? Now in the United States, and of course it's not a very good example today when we talk about the United States, as we know. But nevertheless, there are many Malaysians here, mostly are Malaysians. I have one from Europe, right, I believe. Yeah? So public fundings of elections serve as a means of eliminating the improper influence of large private contribution. And the advantages, definitely, as if we look at the United States, it says trust, confidence, democracy, clean election processes, a transparent governance, clean and corrupt-free administration. These are the fundamentals. This is what the advantages are. But again, food for thought. If we look at the Donald Trump administration, we look at the Biden administration, are we seeing all these advantages happening in the United States? Next. My last slide, as I say, when we want to take on the monster, and I quote the words of the German philosopher who say, whoever fight monster should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster itself. Yeah, that's something for us to think about. The philosopher says that. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back to you. In other words, everything is about the conscience in us. What is actually in us? If you want to be a politician, to serve this country, are you really born to be a politician, wanting to serve the countries? Taking India example, are you talking about the Mahatma Gandhi, right? Are you talking about South Africa, the Nelson Mandela? I don't see that in this country, without quoting names. So politicians, when we vote them and put them in their positions in parliament, and when they wear the cap of a politician or the cap of a minister and so on, somehow or rather, I myself realized that I do not know about you, that they change from a very so-called innocent fraud, perhaps to the incredible heart of a monster, to take that as an example. So that's something very strange in this country. We have, I don't know what is, we have been independence for how many years, sorry? We are celebrating our independence for 65 years, eh? Yeah, sorry, you see, I'm also not a very good citizen, all right? But professors get, they get forgotten easily whenever they want, all right? Because we have so many theses to read, and that's a good excuse for ourselves. It's easy to handle our students, but it's not easy to handle the public. But politicians forget that they are handling public perception. They're handling their responsibilities when we put their faith in them. And this is what we get today. So I'm not too sure whether do they need political funding. Well, political funding is a necessary evil because we are dealing with human beings. Some 2 months ago, I think when Mr. Cheah invited me to talk about corruption, right? I say the same thing, and I think that we can't measure today. There is no thermometer to measure the real heart and the real minds of a person, including three of us here at this stage. We are actually not what we are when we are wearing the cap. Yeah, so I would not quote other people, but when I wear my cap as doing a Bible worthy with my PhD students, I have to be strict and try to perceive that I have better knowledge than them. That's quite hypocritical for us, like myself. What about the politicians? What about many of us? So where is that measurement? How do we measure that integrity versus the perception? With that, I leave this, my first part of it, because I was told by the moderator we have much time to talk about, and I can talk for hours, and thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Because I let Prof present, so I must allow Madam President, can you please give your opening salvo? You know, like in court, you open up your opening statement, just for this, and then we'll have a chit-chat.
Just an opening salvo. How many minutes do I have?
Up to you.
Okay, so thank you actually. I just want to say thank you for the kind introduction earlier on, Kamarul. That was actually very kind of you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and of course, distinguished panelists. I am disheartened to note that Dato Dr is not able to join us. It would have been a very, very interesting...
Maybe he's here.
Is he?
I hope so. Breaking news, Tupper, just concentrate on here. Yeah. He will be here anyway. Okay, go ahead.
So, you know, I think insofar as the Malaysian bar is concerned, we have made no bones about our stand. We have definitely been calling for the legalization of the political financing laws. In fact, back in 2018, after GE 14, when the then government of the day came in the picture, they set up this commission called the Institutional Reform Commission, or in short, the IRC.
Amen.
And for the IRC in 2018, we had submitted over 80 papers, and amongst one of those papers is the political financing law, which we said that we needed to have that put in place. Of course, amongst that is also the anti-hopping law. And unfortunately, again, both of it went in together. Anti-hopping law, of course, became a priority. So, you know, I think it goes without saying, political financing, if there is no proper framework by way of a legislation in place in our country, it is going to be, it's going to create an environment or an ecosystem which is ripe for corruption. And we see this because we see terms such as political funding, we see terms as donations being used in a very loose way without any kind of real legal definition. And that's the reason why you see monies actually flowing into personal accounts, monies flowing into companies, monies not necessarily flowing into political parties. And so this is what we call the money that's going round and round in rather complex different ways, okay, being used in illicit or unsavory ways. And that is how the anti-money laundering laws also come about. Because, you know, corruption is the main offense, it is a serious offense. The anti-money laundering is what we call a predicate offense. A predicate offense meaning when you have committed something which is very, very serious, what you will do is you will then use that money in order to launder it, and that's a secondary offense. And that's the reason why you will see some of the leading cases that's being heard at the moment. Most of them may not necessarily are being caught or being charged under corruption, but they are actually being charged under anti-money laundering.
Karen, I'm so sorry. I've left mainstream media for almost 1.5 years now, but I still have the bad habit of interjecting.
Okay.
And let me reverse the situation for you. Some people, especially the young, they like to ask me this question when I was with Asrawani, and they said, yeah, but you have all these laws, you have all these institutions, but when the very, very top people do it, what can you do? So I'm going to frame it to you. Right now, with the laws that we have, why is it so frustrating in the effort to curtail corruption and the loss of integrity that we do not have the Political Funding Act?
Okay, so like you said, and you observed it correctly, Kamarul, we've been talking about Political Financing Act for the longest time. There was supposed to be something that was to have been discussed back in 2000 something. There was some purported bill in 2019. We've not seen this purported bill. And so, you know, frankly, the Malaysian Bar, we have gotten a little bit tired of waiting for it. And so what has transpired is that we then became part of this all-party parliamentary group, or the APPG for political financing. It is something which is set up by the Parliamentary Select Committee within the Parliament. And we then volunteered to draft that political financing bill. And we have drafted that bill. That bill is a comprehensive bill. We've come up with a bill with 85 different sections. We have dealt with who can donate, who cannot donate, what kind of commission is being set up in order to look over, you know, or oversee.
Okay, let's go there. Let's go there, because sometimes it's too much in the afternoon if we bite it wholesomely. So let's take it bit by bit. Right now, under the present constitution and law, can I go to any politician and any political party, especially the treasurer, and ask, how much money do you have and where did it come from? Can I do that?
Okay, under the present setup, most political parties, they are usually registered with the Societies Act. And because they are registered with the Societies Act, there is no real mechanism to deal with the kind of money that goes into the party, whether it's a donation or whether you actually have to declare it. I mean, everything is just, simple debit credit ledger time of thing.
So I can see the total in terms of a financial statement, but who gave you this 600 million? I wouldn't be able to.
Nobody would be able to.
Okay, jump back to your favorite discussion of the day, which is election. We do know that Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya, SPR, Election Commission, have a bit of an authority when it comes to campaigning and the financing of campaigning, right?
Yeah. So we have the Elections Offences Act, and that's a 1954 Act. We are talking about an act which is pre-Merdeka days. I mean, this is, nobody would have envisaged technology, how it's actually being done. Money laundering didn't even exist at that point in time, or maybe it did, but in many different ways. And so we are looking at a framework, a legislative framework, which cannot cope with the kind of things that's being done in our environment at this point in time. So because of that, even our laws are insufficient to deal with what we are facing at this point.
Having answered that, I would like to wear the other hat now, and not only do I in the media take complaints from the people, I also listen to politicians. Some politicians keep saying, hey, that group, they even use public institutions and public machinery. What does that mean? Because if I take Professor Jayles' definition just now, that qualifies for financing and resources in that sense. I might not be getting money, but I'm using other institutions to support my campaign, which can be huge, because if you cover from Perlis to Sabah and Sarawak, that's a huge logistical nightmare. So will that go under the APPG too?
Yep, that's all dealt with in our political financing bill. We've dealt with what can be done, what is the definition of political financing, what kind of fundraising is allowed, what kind of campaigning is allowed, who can donate, who cannot donate.
Okay, Karen, we go real life examples, it's easier. Prof, you said that you will, sometimes people come up to you wanting to sue you, but I'm going to force your hand here. One of the word and term we keep hearing regarding what I said to Madam President of the bar just now is the government machinery being used for campaigning. And now it's good that we have the political situation as we do. The so-called opposition also are government in states, right? So both sides, accusing both sides, and the Rakyat stands in the middle. How do we look at this? The utilization of public funded institutions and resources for political gains.
Okay, thanks. Well, we for example, we come from a university background, and universities are supposed to be apolitical. I think to answer this question, using public premises or public things that are paid by taxpayers, whether it's used by whichever divide, I don't think it's easy to stop the intention of politicians, whether they are from the other divide or that divide, when they want to use your premise, for example, this building, or let's say they want to use University Malaya, for example. I hope nobody from University Malaya will sue me, or another university, for example. Now, if someone comes with a letter intent and say that we want to talk about the future of work, for example, which is generally a topic. But in the midst of that topic what we're discussing, and there are elements of politicking going on, all right, so you start to use your position as party leaders or minister leaders when you launch a certain program in the universities, and you definitely use that to influence. Do you constitute political influencing? Is it wrong or is it right? Because like what Madam President said, there is no rule at the moment. All right, so because there is no rule that says you can't do, if A can do it, why not B? So if a university, let's say if I take DAP comes and say, I want to use your university to talk about the future of work. And if I allow as the Vice Chancellor, example, then I should also allow UMNO, for example, the next week. Again, to me, is perception. How do public sees it? But I do not know, under the University Act, do we violate that? But under the University Act 555, we are not allowed, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is that also is to coin these in context of what's happening right now. Inflationary pressure, loss of income, and the ability of the value of money that we have vis-a-vis like other nations or US dollars or whatever. So the pressure on the average layman in Malaysia is tighter and tighter. Yes, the new Honda CR-V has got 20,000 booking in 3 days. Yes, the new Prodo has got 30,000. But what about the majority B40, who some believe is already B60 now? So that's where I'm coming from. Just having an anti-hopping law without a political funding act is just talking about political funding act and anti-hopping without talking about freedom of the press. Because without transparency, who's going to utilize the political funding act and the anti-hopping law? Right? So I'm going to go back to context now. And one of the great things you will find in all the nations already having political funding act is specific provision for transparency. So I'm going to go back to Madam President here. I mean, we can talk until the cows come home on transparency on so many things in Malaysia. 1954, you said, media is still bound by laws originating from 1948 in this country. During emergency declaration, are we in any emergency right now? As you can see, whatever. So, but you get what I'm going at, right? The context and the transparency aspect of political funding. Because if you look at our small neighbor down south, small but very advanced, called Singapore, it bans any anonymous donation exceeding 5,000 Sing dollars. Okay? If you give more than 5,000 Sing dollars, you're not gonna be anonymous. I want to know. For example, when I interviewed the late Sheldon Adelson, the founder of Las Vegas Sand, who built Marina Bay Sand, I talked to him about him as the biggest contributor to the Republican Party. So we can do that, but I can't do that in my own country because I don't even know. So can you allude to the transparency aspect of the Political Funding Act?
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire thing about the Political Financing Act, or the bill that we have drafted for that matter, it is actually to deal with good governance within the country. It's about the betterment of how you regulate political financing for our nation. And we wanted to talk about setting up a statutory body or a commission, an independent commission, separate from the government, separate from the opposition, separate from anything else, but set up under this political financing bill or act. And this commission will look at private funding as well as public funding. So we're talking about monies that's going straight into political parties to deal with whatever activities that they want to do within the political party. And we're also talking about public funding, meaning monies that's actually being donated directly into the commission in order for the commission to then use those funds for distribution to political parties. Because at this point in time, we find a disproportionate amount of monies that's being given to political parties in order to run their activities. And they play a very important part, whether you form the government of the day or whether you form the opposition. Both of them help each other out in the running of the nation. Yes. And so parties which do not have sufficient funds will lose out in trying to do whatever that they have to do. So that is the reason why we say we've set up the commission to talk about the public funding aspect.
Ladies and gentlemen, since we lack one panelist on the floor, I'm going to allow you to come to the mic right now. And if you can queue up there, I'll just go to questions straight away and weave it into the chat we're having on stage. Having said that, Karen, just a bit more on you. I mean, the rakyat didn't ask to read news headlines, WhatsApp messages, or Facebook postings and everything else about the ongoing court cases. And these are court documented statements about hundreds of millions of dollars for political campaign and political finance. I mean, when I was young, we never had that. No one publicly mentioned the amount of like more than 600 million ringgit or US dollar and politics. But right now, even my kids in school read about all this and ask me about it. So since it's already in the consciousness of the nation, can you, from your vantage point as President of the Bar Council, I mean, it's good that these things are being discussed in court, but the ability of the readers, the society to understand it must be a 360 point of view. Otherwise, they just read that and maybe slant it towards political affinity. What the chance we have here today is to put it again into context. How should we see these things being deliberated in court right now? Because it might be shocking to somebody who's talking about, I can't afford minyak masak at 40 ringgit per bottle. And then suddenly I'm reading about court cases and 600 million is being talked about. So talk about disproportionate. Let's talk about disproportionate to the average layman here. Because democracy, if it's governed well, should distribute equal distribution to people?
Oh, I don't know where to start about that. I mean, my daughter asked me exactly the same type of questions. I mean, how does this happen? The court cases, I think, in the last few years have actually revealed to us, okay, how glaring it is, okay, something like this is happening, and that is actually happening quite rampant. Very, very rampant. In fact, it's an open secret. Everybody knows, okay, that companies are actually, giving monies, okay, for whatever reasons and purposes. Of course, the biggest glaring thing is, of course, we are receiving monies from a foreign source or a foreign government, and whether or not that is something that we can do or we cannot do. But because, we don't have any act or any kind of regulation, there is no prohibition, and because there is no prohibition, there's nothing anybody can do about it.
So in short, you're saying that our political financing here is a wild, wild west.
Yes, it is a wild, wild west.
Prof? But we have laws. We have moral compass in this country. People have given their life to see where we are today. Look at Mat Kilau and getting more 100 million. Why are we having this?
If you ask me, I think it is from the leadership. All right, and I keep saying the same thing. It happens in our education sector too. And I always share the experience when we keep flogged in using English language as the language of stand. It's the same thing as you cannot get the political funding approved. Because if we continue to use that leadership, and because if we continue to, I'm not sure whether I should say this, but I think I will say it. All right? That if we continue to be racial politics, and every political party is based on race, and they will definitely want to be popular, okay, to represent their parties. Yes. And hence, that leadership rots from the top.
Yeah, actually, Kamarul, I just want to also add on to that, Kamarul. I think, okay, the real reason why laws are enacted and not enacted is only for one thing: political will. Do we or do we not have political will? And at the moment, the anti-hopping got past the post because it is within the MOU, right? The political financing was not in the MOU, okay? So therefore, there was political will for the anti-hopping law.
Let me rephrase what you said from my understanding. Because it's not in the confidential supply agreement or MOU, so political funding, which needs both sides of the aisle in Dewan Rakyat to agree, would never be agreed. Right? Who can force either the government forming parties or the opposition forming parties to enact this? Because the current opposition had their chance for 22 months. Was it tabled during that time?
It was drafted apparently, but it was never tabled. I don't think they got that cabinet approval at that point.
My frustration is for the media, because I've always wanted to see a more open rules and regulation. Fine, don't dispel the rules that prohibits the media and journalists, but give us and empower us with acts that also give us a chance, like Freedom of Information Act, for example. So I want to approach political financing and funding the same way, but I need your voice. I promise you, if you go to the mic right now, I'll be very kind and gentle with you, okay? And I'll get Mr. Chua there to buy you dinner. Can Mr. Chua? Whoever goes to and ask question, see, I incentivize you transparently and I hope legally, right, Karen? So while waiting for the question, my next question is, for a nation, money coming from outside, financing coming from outside the country, always carry a bit more scrutiny, if not a lot more. Some countries allow it, some countries don't, blanketly. Even those that allow it, put caps on it. Where do you two stand if we were to propose and get it passed, financing of political parties and political persons from outside?
I'm going to speak first.
Sure, go ahead.
So the bar is very clear on this. We are clearly against any kind of foreign funding, whether it is a foreign company or whether it is a foreign government. We've drawn and learned from the experience of the 2.6 billion. And so, we're very clear on that. And because of this, even all parties, all the political parties sitting within the APPG are also with us on this. When we drew and drafted the political financing bill, we had put there no foreign funding allowed.
Why?
We did not want there to be an influence to be, exerted within our country just because there is money that is being given. Now, just because monies are actually being given, if they say, I'm giving you this money with no terms and conditions, that's fine, okay? But we do not want that part where we are beholden to whoever it is, or whichever country it is, when the money has been given, and if they make one call to you and say, can you do this, can you do that, although you have no terms and conditions, spoken ones, but you feel beholden. So we feel that we need to move away from foreign funding.
Prof?
My thought is simple. I don't think, even if the political funding is legalized, I don't think any form of money given to anybody is free. It can be subtle. Yeah. So whether it's from the country or outside the country, it has a free that nobody on earth. When I was very poor, nobody on earth gave me $10 also to eat, for that matter. Right. So I don't think that is able for us, even we legalize it and say that okay, you are able to raise a few hundred billion, but no strings attached. There will be something coming in, not in this generation, but maybe in the next in the second or third generation when we died. So we are indebted to whoever gave us $1, we are indebted to that person, somehow or other. If I don't repay you today, I repay you 10 years later. If I can't repay you, I get my daughter to get married to you, for example. Yeah.
No takers. Free dinner, I'll be gentle, never mind. I came from the paddy fields of the north. So I've been taught to, go down on the ground. So I will bring the mic to you. I saw some former chief minister there, some very top accounting expert, legal expert. I'll be going to you. But before I go down, okay, let's do it the Malaysian way. Ala kau tim lah. How do we address that even if we have an act? Something I give now, the moment you go up in power, whether it's Putrajaya, Petrajaya, Kangau, wherever, then only I'll be going to you. It's not like I give it now and I get back the transaction, right? So any act that you have, that is still so difficult to detect, and even much more to stop by enforcement. So how do you think we should approach that? Because all of us in this room know about this. That's why many of your organization and institutions don't even allow kuih bakul anymore, rendang and lemang to be given as gift anymore, or even flowers for birthday and chocolates for birthdays. No gift policy. Even Petronas, right? The biggest of them all. But we do know that these things keep on happening, it's just that it's not black and white. So if we have an act, this is one of the biggest elephant in the room that must be looked at. Prof?
I think it is easy to catch someone giving you a box of chocolate and a bouquet of flower, right? Because that's been very sincere. So today I bring a bouquet of flower or a box of chocolate to Kamarul, everybody sees it. But somehow in our system, it is much easier to seek 6.2 billion somewhere into your accounts, and that doesn't come out at all. So again, we are still talking about, it is happening. And actually it is happening as we said. Whatever political legalizing, we are just trying to make people more aware that although God is looking after you, but that's your next life, you can go and describe about it. But now there is some physical being looking at you, and so you are more aware of trying to hide that 600 or a billion, for example.
Okay.
I think the bigger the sum of money, the more difficult it looks like the system We got bitcoins, you got all kinds of things hiding everywhere.
So what can we do? Karen?
Yeah, so I mean, again, when we come back to the Act, again, with all the sections that we have, we've put in, who can actually give the donation, who cannot give the donation. For those who can give the donation, what is the threshold they can give? If it's an individual, what is how much you can give? If it is a company, how much you can give? If it's a group of companies, how much they can give? So that's a threshold for them to actually follow.
So like a formula SOP?
Yeah.
However,
and there are offences if there's contravention.
Nice. However, we are very different from the US. You see, in the US, lobbying is a way of life for mainstream politics, correct? There's a lobby group for nearly everything. Like my glasses, the screws to left and right, there's even an organization for that, and they do lobby in Washington. When I went with the US State Department, I debated with them, along with 26 other editors from developing nations. And we asked the US State Department, why is it that your constitution, your rule of law, your global diplomacy works for everywhere in the world, except for Palestine? And they answered. They actually answered formally. You know what they said? Do you want to know? If you want to know, please ask the first question. Never mind. They said, well, there's one group in Washington that never sleeps, never take a beat, rest, never take a smoke, and they are the Jewish lobby. Where is the Palestinian lobby? So while we talk about limiting things, we must also see whether we can conducively propagate a healthy system, a new political dimension, socio-economic dimension that goes together with legalizing financing for politics. I'm just saying. Do you agree? Yes. So, who should I ask first? Should I go to a former chief minister? Do you agree? Yes. You agree? A resounding yes. But you call me brother at Pangko Dialogue. So I'm coming to you as a brother. Right? Yes, a big round of applause. Can we have your view? I'm not forcing you to a corner. I just want your view, because before I know you as a politician, I knew you as a public intellectual. And this topic today concerns all of us. So as a public intellectual and a politician, what do you say?
Kamarul, you really make me in a very difficult situation to answer this, because I'm wearing too many hats now.
Choose one hat.
Choose one hat on personal basis. I think basically we have to really look at this practically, because as you know, as far as our political party is concerned, we initiated it a couple of years back, right before the last election. But unfortunately, the other side say no at the moment. Then we feel it's time for us to have this. And even in America, if you're talking, just to respond to professors and Karen, well, we understand this very well, because we need to have a more mature political process in Malaysia. However, we have to look at the real practice, especially in America, for example. If people always look at America as the best models for political financing act. They call it super PAC, not even from PAC to super PAC. They keep on adjusting it and then changing it, because as you know, as the new challenges crop up from time to time. And that's also we need to address more technical issues, such as the hard money versus the soft money, how you define it. I personally believe that in Malaysia, we need to have this sooner than later. We hope that before the end of our session, parliament session, the next parliament session probably, we'll be able to have our new bill on political funding. Yeah, that's our commitment from President Nationals.
That's a scoop. I haven't heard that in the media yet. Right? One last question for me, as a favor to an old friend. Dah lama tak jadi wartawan. So nak tanya, many people seem to equate political financing and money politics in the same breath. So
Yeah.
I'm going to come to you with that. Overall in Malaysia, perception is money politics is way big and susah nak jaga. So do you think if we have a political financing or political funding act, we could once and for all really address money politics?
Yeah, it is really it's a very thin line to distinguish between the two. I think the most important thing for us is to really have a system. When you put the law in place, we believe that we'll be able to define it further. What is politic one versus what the other one is political financing. So it needs more engagement from various parts, very political divide as well. So I think eventually, once we have the system in place, we'll be able to distinguish between the two.
I'm going to give a right of reply from my panelists to what former Yang Muhammad said. Karen, you want to go first?
I think money politics and political financing, maybe there is a slight nuance difference. There's a slight nuance of difference. Political financing, we're talking about monies that's actually being given, donated in order to fund activities that's being held by political party. Money politics, I think it is, it's a lot wider. It's a lot more general. It may not necessarily have anything to do with political parties or activities being carried out by political parties. It could be anything more than that. It could even be corruption. It could even be a simple thing like I'm giving you a box of chocolates or etc. So I think two different things altogether.
Prof?
I think I would just make this comment on money politics. To me, as an academician, money politics is just that I liked that person so much, and I think he's someone I would support for this election. I just give the money without any strings attached, and that's money politics. But I may come back to him one day and say, do you still remember me? That's my take out of it. Thank you.
Prof, since you say that, and you are in the higher education world in our country and beyond, how do you think our young, especially in our uni, look at the current fiasco of money politics? Because if I look to it since 1990s when I was campaigning in a student election, the rate of voting and the interest to engage in this kind of democratic policies and processes, even in campuses, is not all that encouraging. Is it that the moral compass being destroyed by the lack of enforcement of money politics already? We're seeing the toll of it from a non-financial side?
No, I think we should not underestimate the young. Especially, I think they are more informed than us.
Okay.
Especially with this internet and everything. They know. If I take up my two daughters, anyway, they have not been going for voting since 20, don't know what year, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I think they are politically immune to what is happening.
Okay.
They are being bombarded with all kinds of negative perceptions. I think the perception has become reality. I'm sorry, there's quite a number of politicians, but I have to say this.
Okay.
But when they were young, I remember the first election I took them, I used to vote, I can say this out transparent, I vote for Barisan National. We always tell, being a Chinese, you say, don't even think about turning the table, just go and vote. Panda Inda, Ong Tiket or whatever, I can't remember the guy. Alright? Because I didn't give him political money. Alright? So, but now I think they are politically immune, they are tired. They are more well-informed. So to answer your question is, I think this election, they make better judgment. They will know what they want. And they know that we are talking crap when we are saying there is no corruption, because they know that it will take us donkey years. If America has not solved it and other countries have not solved it, forget about Malaysia. We have not solved anything for that matter.
Okay.
Yeah, for that matter. We have not solved anything. From education, agriculture, to anything you mentioned, nothing is solved. That's what they see, and that's the way I see it.
But
Okay, we have not solved it. Nothing. We keep talking. We have chicken supply, no chicken, then oversupply of chicken. What have we solved?
which table is that? I'm going to
Yeah.
you after this. You
Yeah,
clap, right? Okay.
so if as a country with this kind of leadership, whether we like it or not,
Yeah.
and we have not solved anything,
Okay.
how can we solve political things that are going to determine their life?
Let's widen the net a bit more. Another public intellectual that I know. Can you please introduce yourself and give your views on the topic today?
I think we need to reflect. We need to reflect on what happened in South Africa when they decide. I'm Yahya Ahmad Hassan. Now, if you take the case of South Africa, when they released Mandela from prison, they had an all-party, what they call. They had a special committee, reconciliation and third party. So what happened was they had a very strong truth and reconciliation committee. During the discussion, they discussed so many things. They have agreed on so many basic things. However, they had a few things that caught up with them, which none would agree with. It was just a real hurdle. So what happened was, came Mandela to solve the problem. He said, on behalf of my community, I forgive everyone who have done so many, destroyed the black community and all the rest of it. And then, when that happened, Mandela felt he has released a big chunk of unhappiness, vindictiveness, and the rest of it. Then the committee became functional. And what happened then was the apartheid group, the whites, suddenly took it as a surprise, and then they too committed to the settlement between the communities. Yes, in the end we must come to it. The table there, they were clapping their hands. No, I thought they had the same feeling. Thank you.
Terence, help me out here, please. If we do push for the Political Financing and Political Funding Act, do we need to include a clause on truth and reconciliation and forgiveness?
I think you can't legislate that. That's impossible to legislate because we all have different policies and moral compass. Forgiveness, this is all outside legislation. I think there cannot be a formula to legislate forgiveness.
Okay, Dr. Yahya, that's your answer. You want to ask a question? I'm not forcing. Okay, Ken, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tachahau, Wanakam. My name is Yasir Arafat. I'm from Pertubuan, Suara Belia. Okay, it's really good to hear a lot of discussion and also from opinions from a lot of people, intellectual people, and it's really honored to be here. Okay, we are talking about political fund, and eventually we are still complaining. We are not coming with any kind of solution. We are still saying yes, we are still saying no, but when we are going to take initiative to move the thing. So, as a younger generation of Malaysia, we are talking about overseas, Singapore, Thailand, Europe, and so on. What is happening in our country? When we are going to legalize the political fund, so that at the end of the day, because we are getting the donation, because end of the day, NGO or party, it need to finish the fund, whatever the fund they get, to serve to their community. Why not? Maybe this is my suggestion, where we can implement the tax inside the donation, where is another term of revenue. At the same time, we can have the record. Even though some of the NGOs or parties, they are sending to the audit, but a lot of the NGOs in Malaysia, more than 3,000 to 4,000 NGOs not sending an audit also. So, tax them.
Prof, can we tax the politicians and the political parties? Should we? Must we?
Well, when this is legalized, of course, I think we have to tax whatever funding going to the political parties. But at the end of the day, I also ask, the question I ask is the government wanting to make money out of political funding? If the party wants political funding that is legalized, which means they need the money to run their activities. So, do you want to tax them 10%, 15%, 24% and make money out of that? I'm not sure about where the government wants it to be.
Correct. Thanks.
I'm going to hold a very different view. So I'm so sorry, IRB, LHDN. I am going to say that monies that's going to go for political financing has got to be exempted, wholly exempted from tax. Only because we are talking about the strengthening of the institution of our democracy. We are talking about the political parties putting in politicians who are actually going to try and run the government or to oppose on the government, sit on the opposition side, be the check and balance and hold the government of the day accountable. We're talking about activities being carried out by political parties for the essential running of the country. Whatever money that goes to the party for the activities must remain only for the activities of the political party. Rakyat must be able to benefit from the monies that's actually being held by the political party. So I'm going to suggest that it has to be fully exempted from tax. In fact, if I'm just going to be able to add on to that, there are countries who are actually exempting funding to political parties from tax. We're looking at countries like, I think, India, probably South Africa, and to a certain extent, Canada as well. So I think it's not something new. So I'm going to suggest that we exempt it wholly.
Okay. I only have a few minutes left, but I haven't had a lady asking from the floor, can I have a female representative before I close? Questions from the floor. One lady? Anywhere? Mr. Chua, would you give a very expensive dinner to this lady? Thank you. Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Seorang je, tolonglah. Saya nak kena balik naik bas tau hari ni, kesian kat saya. Pakai kot dengan tie, saya seorang je selalu naik bas dengan lelaki pakai kot dengan tie. Anyone? Baguslah rakyat Malaysia. I like you guys. So, Professor actually tak payah takut kena saman. Okay, I will represent you, no problem. My question is, if we do not tax, if we do not have a political funding act, then how are we going to change politik lama, old politics? Because the inertia of the old politics is so entrenched, even from the financing perspective, just to get 30% women candidates is gonna be such a headache. When Bursa Malaysia can have a rule that 30% of board members on all public listed companies must be female. And there's a deadline to it. Are you saying that our politics are way laggard than our corporate? If that is the case, and then what's the hope of democracy in our country? Because the corporate and the market would not stop for climate change. They would not help miskin tegar and B40 on their own free will. That's why they call it CSR. But not their main profit under Patami or EBITDA. Last time I checked, the constitution was very clear. This country was done, was made, was fought for the betterment of the quality of life of every single Malaysian. So if you're telling me that we're not going to have political funding act, we're not going to have taxation of politicians and political parties, how are we going to change all politics that is now running the country without listening to any of you? Of course, any of us three here. I'm going to start with my panelists. You can feel free to give your answer if you want to. The mic is still there. I've gone ladies first, so I'm going to go Prof first this time.
Thanks. I think my take is this. It's not only about whether you want 30% people to be politicians or women, all right? We are talking about that. But at the rate we are going, I can say that, pessimist as it is, nobody will be interested to become a politician if you are a right mind. Because what we are seeing today, and we have not seen the end of it, although we've been promised the end will be near, is that there is continuous corruption, continuous perception of politicians are corrupted, politicians don't perform, then they become the minister, they just go different, and we have seen enough. Somebody that we trusted so much, somebody that we say he has never been a minister before, gonna become a minister, he's a totally changed person. When those days he will walk into the street market, go to the roadside and talk to the uncle, auntie, now you can't see him except every day he's busy. That's the scenario we are painting to the young people. And anybody in the right mind, and those who speak out their mind, persecuted, this and that. And then you hear scandals coming up from, whether you believe it or not, we do not know. And we are confused. Fake news, deep news, whatever news. Do you think we have a political future for ourselves
Prof,
in this
I
country?
wanted to end on a positive note. You are painting even a
No, I know, I'm saying no.
picture for
No.
us.
However, having said so, there can only be a positive note, yeah? If we can accept the negativity, just like our friend said in South Africa.
Okay.
Can we forgive? What if people don't want forgiveness?
Okay.
You need to ask for forgiveness before you can be forgiven.
Okay.
That's the first step that we teach our children, and that what we taught, but that's not shown in our leadership. They fight till the end and stay straightened. But the bahasa word is menegakkan benang yang basah. Is it what we want? I'm not sure. All right. So this is a very gloomy thing for us. Does it take us another 5 years or immediate change in GE 15? The education from where we come, we can't teach that values anymore. There is no political values and add values to become a politician.
All right.
Thank you.
I wanted to end on a positive note, but okay, since you opened that door, Madam President.
Okay,
I'll come to you. Okay.
if we don't have a political financing act, and if we don't have all the legal framework in place, very bad for the country, definitely. But the good news is, when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, we had actually factored that into our bill. And we had given incentives, okay, to political parties who are encouraging women as ministers or representatives within parliament.
Okay.
And we are going to give you the public funding in order for you to run whatever activities that you want. Okay. And I will end it on a positive note with you. If we don't get it done or passed at this parliamentary sitting, let's hope we get it done for the next parliamentary sitting. But in any event, our work never ends, because we have to just continue knocking on the door. And every time you knock on the door, one day that door will open.
Yes, finally. Thank you. You make my day. Mr. Chua, please. Expensive dinner. Okay, thank you. I can bring my mic to you. You can? I need my mic, okay. I'm a ladies' man. I have to. Okay,
Thank you very much. Okay, it's a very interesting topic, and
I'm so sorry, I went to your table just now, but I have not been introduced. Can you please, for the sake of us all?
thank you. My name is Ariel. I'm an English coach, and I'm invited by Professor Dato Yeoh. And interestingly, the topic about women politicians and talking about education, I would think that it's very important for us to educate women the importance to step up. You see, human beings are very much into what is it in for me? What is the incentive? What is so attractive about stepping up? Because as a human being, we were born to be doing things that we are very much comfortable with. Would you agree, everyone? We are very comfortable with what we want to do. So if there is a platform with education helping women to know that, okay, now these are the things that you could do, and you have this platform to step up, to voice out, and they have the why to do so, I would think that many women would be able to step up. So it is the motivation, the mission and the vision that has to be clearly shown to the public, and especially our young people, of why we need to do so. And I would strongly agree with both our panelists. You see, everything has to be properly guided. And also, when we talk about Dato Yeoh's statement, there are things that we wanted to do, but when we do so, what's the outcome? I have an ambition to become a politician way back then. My dad was actually a police officer, and we had a discussion that he told me it is not advisable to step up because of the possible consequences. But I would want to stand here to voice out that if we have a proper education, the platform with transparency, I think all of us will want to do the best for our nation. Would you agree, everyone?
Of course. Yeah.
So, education is the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One last line from each of you about the topic today. Just one last line.
I think the only thing I can say is that we cannot do without a legislative framework. So we need the bill. The good news is, despite the resistance, that we have faced in the last couple of weeks, after our bill was actually presented as a private member's bill in Parliament, was the fact that 2 days ago, on Saturday, I believe that they are going to have a special cabinet meeting to talk about the bill that has been presented. So I think it's looking a little bit positive at this point.
Okay.
Okay, I think my last line is, although I seem quite pessimist about the frustration, but I believe there is a future for this country. All right, and I see that coming, but perhaps it's not beyond my time. All right, but after hearing what Eric has said, I think that there is future, and if only all of us continue to share that there is hope, and with all this transparency and all these things that we want to do, maybe we should educate the politician. Maybe we should suggest that before they be asked to go into taking up their oath, they should undergo a course. I think that's important, because how to become a good politician, how to not disappoint and enter into this trap that you say, I don't know. Perhaps then you won't be able to say, I don't know. Thank you.
I love what Prof said, but one Vice Chancellor once told me that, say, Cam, I just came back from the World Vice Chancellors meet, and we all agreed that we have failed. Why? Because most of the people in power, whether it's corporate or politics, they were our graduates. And these are Ivy League universities included. And they are the big pharma, they are the big energy companies, and yet the ignorance about climate change that a teenager with Tochang from Scandinavia has said loudly more than any leader on earth. So I'm going to end as the moderating note on this with just a simple analogy. My father was a career civil serviceman. He's a teacher all his life. His last post was as Pegawai Pendidikan Daerah. But in the kampong in Perlis where he was, he had to wear his white shoes around his neck because there's no road to go to school. That's why his parents were not educated. Yes, they are Melayu. Yes, they are Bumiputra. But at that time, they still couldn't get to school. My father was determined to break the poverty cycle. So even though where he was only until Darjah 7, and the former Yang Amat Berhormat knows that to take MCE you need to go all the way to 9. So he studied for 2 years Maktab Adabi Gaya Post. While working the paddy fields, he will go under the pohon rimbun pulung and study. Yet, he was denied the scholarship, the Chevenings of the world, the local ones, because he was a son of a nobody. Orang yang dapat nombor 13 dalam kelas got the scholarship to go and study in uni. So he went the long way, became a teacher, masuk Muatab Guruan Sultan Idris, and then went to University Malaya. My point is this: darkness will forever be there, but it only takes a single light to dispel a huge amount of darkness. It doesn't need everyone in this room to take up arms and change the country for the better, but it needs one idea and thinking from each of us getting together and at least telling the next generation, we have failed, but you can do better, and this is how you can do better. And that process, that roll of the coin, you have started by just listening to this discussion this afternoon. So I thank you very, very much, and thank you to the organizer. I'll see you again very soon. And last round of applause for Madam President and Professor. Okay. Over to you, Mr. MC. Sorry.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.